Well, hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Light and Life podcast, conversations on faith and life from downtown Colorado Springs. And I am your host.
What?
Yeah.
Hosting?
We're changing it up. We're switching it up. So Liza Cunningham has the week off, and so I get to sit here. This is Pastor Tim speaking, and I get to sit here with one of my favorite people, Chris Cullins, who's been with us for about 6 years as our modern worship director. And we're going to talk about making music for God. And I wanted to talk about this and just have some time to talk about being a creative and why we make music for God, and what better person to ask to be with us than you, Chris. This is your heart. This is your life. And so I get to be the host. So I don't know if I can do the Liza, entirely do the Liza thing. I think there's going to be some disappointment.
She brings an energy, I'm telling you.
She brings it.
You're going to have to kick it up a notch. You'll be fine.
But she keeps fighting for the air horn.
Right?
And I don't know. Oh, there it is. Yeah, we're bringing it in.
Got it.
So, Liza, if you're listening this week, the air horn is here. But I don't know if it's going to be here next week. So, but excited to play host. It's fun to play host. Love these conversations and love having you here, brother.
Oh, thanks.
So, you've been with us for about 6 years, right?
Yeah, this last fall marked 6 years. Was here fall in 2017, so into the 7th year now, and man, time has flown by for sure. Like, 7 years in some place. You're like, bam, bam. No, of course, right smack in the middle of that, a little epidemic happened. Yeah. So isn't that funny how that just is still almost like a marker for us of
it's
something in our life. You're like, and then that happened, and then this was like the new version.
Yep. It's still like this parentheses that just creates this gap in the middle of the last 5 years.
That's right.
And then what happened?
Right. And then there was that.
And then there was that.
Yep.
And I know you fought through you've had some challenges, some medical challenges, and all kinds of different things. But you came here to us about 6.5 years ago. So, I mean, first thing to ask is, which is better, just Houston or Colorado Springs?
Wow.
What would you pick? Just on a free pick, free selection.
free selection. So with the top pick of the draft, the Cullins team has selected. Yeah, it's not going to be very kind to the Houston fam and friends. I mean, that's just the reality of this answer. We can just go ahead and let them know that.
All right.
All those that are there. There's a reason that people from Houston are trying to crawl and get plane tickets to come to Colorado. So I get that. Now, one of the things about Houston is, my goodness, the people are amazing. The food is incredible. What is happening down there, and that's where I grew up. I mean, you just experience. Yeah. There is a lot to be exposed to with incredible things, incredible art, incredible culture, a lot of great music, killer music stuff happening, and especially in the context of churches.
So you pick
a lot
Houston.
of front edge stuff. So I love that for those things.
Okay.
But. No, I pick Colorado Springs all day.
Hey, all right, here we go.
Take me to the mountains. What's funny, Tim, is I always thought that I would retire to like some studio loft in New York City, or some really cool, urban spot that would be, I imagine myself walking down to my studio as a 70-year-old, doing the thing, grabbing some coffee, doing the deal, right? Now I basically imagine myself out in a cabin in the mountains.
Nice.
That's retirement. So it's amazing how that shifts. But my goodness, it's beautiful here. And it's so inspiring to be in a beautiful place with nature to draw you in. And there's so many great songs. We're talking about all this, making music, being creative. So many songs being sung that you can visibly see and be inspired by right here in Colorado. So it's been a cool thing to be a creative in this place, and be kind of wowed by what our original maker, was Brendan put in front of us.
I think Colorado Springs has inspired more songs than Houston.
Yeah, that's probably good.
Yeah,
people that were in Houston looking at pictures of Colorado.
Yeah,
right.
And
wrote a song.
Starting with what?
No,
Purple. What's
Purple Mountains Majesty?
America's Mountains.
This is right here.
America the Beautiful.
We've got it. Yep. There it is. It's right in our back door. So we're a little spoiled, honestly. I mean, that's the reality. We both kind of drive here to the church and have the mountain right there to our right. And then how often am I not actually even looking at it?
People. I've had someone ask me recently, like, do you get used to looking at those mountains? And like to the point where you take them for granted. And
Yeah.
I remember a buddy, Nate Stratman,
Mm-hmm.
saying his drive into work, looking at Pikes Peak, it was always different every day. And
Right.
And that is true. I mean, you don't get used to it because it's literally something different is happening in those mountains.
Right.
Every time you look at them,
Yeah.
it's just God's hand, God's creative hand making beauty.
Mm-hmm.
So segue,
Yeah.
coming in, locking in. That's what we're going to be talking about, making
Yeah.
beauty. So a lot of people know you, Chris. First time on the podcast. Share with the listeners what you do.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, a lot of times I'm on the other side of this stuff, from the creative technical side. But yeah, no, primary thing that I do here is lead our modern worship expression.
Mm-hmm.
As a worship leader, been a worship leader since I was a little guy, and a part of that with my family, and have had the joy and pleasure of leading just a lot of people from a lot of different states, a lot of different places, into moments where they get to experience God's presence, and I get to be a part of that and see that happen. So that's the primary thing I do here at First Press. And then being a creative, then I get to dip my toes into a lot of the creative things, which are how do we shape message to really help that land on the hearts of people? What are we creating? What are we making? So that's videos, that's music, it's all that kind of stuff that we try to do well. And then a part of that means I'm leading, tech arts team and making sure our venues are ready to go, so that when people come in, they have the best experience possible. I love that. It's just, so I kind of have a little bit of a unique gifting, or a little bit of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to media and production. I think if you've ever dabbled into that, you realize, there's a few other tools that I need to help make this one thing go. So you kind of learn a little bit of that, and you learn a little bit of that, you learn a little bit of that. So
it's like when I had a house, and when we were young, and instead of hiring someone to fix something, I would go buy the tool.
That's right.
And you're like,
that's right.
No, I'm going to go buy the tool. And
right.
We didn't have YouTube back then, people.
Oh my goodness.
If you can even imagine, I had to buy like books on home repair.
That's right.
With pictures in them. And
right.
figure out how to fix the plug. But anyway.
Yeah, drywall for dummies. Yeah.
But so you lead worship, and just I think a lot of people wonder, when someone's leading worship, is there a switch that flips at some point where this preparation and this, because it's a lot of, you've got to take care of the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
The Swiss Army knife has to lock in. We have to get the microphones right, the lights right, the venue right, the sound levels right, practice the instruments. But that, maybe just talk about that switch that flips when okay, this isn't a concert, this is worship.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, there's that's a really good one. I think the reality for church worship that's always going to be a struggle is being able to use the talent that God gave you. You've now crafted that as best as you can. You've protected that craft. And then hopefully you're working on that, but then you're using that craft to then actually give forth the best worship possible out of the best understanding that you have of worship, whatever level that is.
Yeah.
But you're going to give that best, so you go to, Colossians 3:23, do everything you can to the best of your abilities unto the Lord, not unto men, right? So there is that moment where you do, okay, I'm going to give my best, and also know that even in my best, there's also a line where all of a sudden it became about me, right?
Okay.
So when have I performed to the best that all of a sudden people's eyes and attention or praise were then drawn to an individual, to my talent or my gifting, versus my gifting being something that is creating an avenue or a channel to pull people in so that they can have their own fresh encounter with the presence of God. And hopefully we're doing that together, and obviously congregational worship. So there is definitely, but there's definitely there's
nobody
these moments.
Came to praise a musician. Like I want to go, I want to go downtown, walk into a venue and praise a musician.
Right.
Well,
no, that's not it. And now there's times for that. And there's the beauty of entertainment. I mean, that's the thing. And that's, for me, I've always had a big thing.
Thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for touching me. Thank you for And so you're that gratitude. Like, I mean, you know, I'm pretty open about the fact I want to go to see you two at the Sphere.
Yeah,
we've not worked
we've heard
that
you
out
talk
yet.
about it. Yeah, it's good.
I'm still waiting for someone to call in and say,
Right.
you know, we bought you tickets. It
Right.
hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't?
No.
We're gonna try to work on that.
But, you know, I'd love to say, hey, Bono, thanks.
Right.
You know, I think that'd be a great day.
It would be a great day.
But no, yeah, for worship,
Uh-huh.
you know, no one came to praise a musician. No one came to praise a preacher. No one came to praise, they came to praise the Lord. And so I think you do just a fantastic job of facilitating that. And that's what
thanks.
it is. Because everybody's got we all have the temptation to praise the creation over the creator. And that happens a lot, that I love this thing that God made. And so I'm going to just attach to it. I'm going to make it my most important thing. But God made it powerful and beautiful and moving and inspiring in order to move your heart to worship Him.
Correct.
And it's the same thing when we're leading worship together. And we'll say just a word about your sense of call to jump in with us at First Pres.
Yeah. Here we go back to that summer of 2017, and I was in Houston. I was doing a lot of work for a lot of different churches at that point as a contract worship leader and musician, and in that town that has a lot going on, in a land of many churches, for sure. But also just kind of wrestling with, man, the Lord has called me to be a worship leader. And how do I do that in the most relational way? There's been so many times where, you know, if you're leading as a guest at a church, or you can do this actually in your own local church if you're not careful, but you end up leading for, you know, cameras, lights, and it's a praise concert, to use a word you like to use, and I agree with that, right? It ends up being like a kind of a praise concert thing versus something that is a relational
praise concert interrupted by a helpful talk.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
Yep.
So the call for me was, how can I do this in a relational way so that when we're singing certain lyrics of songs, I'm looking at people's faces and eyes, and I know what's actually going on in their life and their story. And that's the call of any kind of ministry shepherd that should be, you know, for us. So Amy and I were wrestling through how to do that well, while running a lot of creative stuff. I was running a studio at that point, and I remember the phone call from you. That we were talking about, okay, what's next for First Pres? And I remember really clearly you talking about, hey, the church, global church, Big C Church, is at what you were believing was a critical point where the church needed to be creating, which needed to be not just responding to culture and trying to fit it into the walls of the church, or taking what is currently happening out there. And modern day music, art, whatever it might be, but the church needs to be making this.
Yes.
I remember you being actually pretty fired up about it.
Yep.
and that for me was a moment where, you know, I wasn't quite sure what that looked like as far as worship ministry, and if that meant the local church and full-time ministry and into that rhythm and that grind, so to speak, of that. And I was trying to figure out, man, what is that? But I remember you saying, it's time for us to make things. It's time for us to create things. Yep. And that was a big moment for me.
Nice. Yeah, that's a huge part of who we are. I mean, I hope I'm still fired up about it. I think I am, because it's because I spend a lot of time studying how Christians react to culture, and I think we don't know what to do sometimes as Christians. We know that we're entertained by the culture. It's easy to pop on an entertaining show on Netflix or you know, Apple TV or something, and just like it gives you this sort of gift of just I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just being entertained, but at the same time, culture has an impact on us, has an effect on us. Yeah. We know that there are cultural leaders with agendas that are trying to shape what we think is right and wrong and good and bad, and as Christians, more and more, you know, the Spirit works in your heart, and eventually you start to. It's just like that. It just doesn't taste right. You know, it doesn't taste right. And so then you respond, and Christians respond in a number of ways that aren't necessarily healthy. So they go to combat. Like, oh, so that's the agenda over there at, let's just name Disney maybe. And you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to war with that. Like, I'm gonna attack that. And that can, you know, feel good for a minute, but it doesn't it doesn't produce. I don't think it produces the healthiest posture for Christians to grow in, just to be in sort of like a combat church. And then other churches are like, well, we should just copy it. We should copy the stuff that works right. And I remember as a youth pastor, I literally had the card, if you like U2,
right,
then you would like to listen to Third Day.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you like,
here's the songs you like, right?
And I know this thing still exists, and I love Christian music, but sometimes there's an uncareful just mimicry, and I spent a lot of time studying the church, and in my study of the history of the church, what you find is that it doesn't take long, if you look into it at all,
right,
to see that the church literally created the calendar. The church, we're 2024 because the church said it's Anno Domini. It's the reign of Christ continues, and so now we're counting from his birth. Creating culture is what the church has always done, and to some extent, creating it without really, I don't want to say not caring, but it's not in order to sell it to the world. It's just we just want to create things that are beautiful. We want to create things that are good, and we want to create things that are true, and just let them have their own impact. And so, here at First Pres, as you know, we declared our 7 values, and the 7th value is make beauty, because we don't want to just be a combat. We don't want to be copying. We want to be creating. We want to be culture makers. We want to be creating something, making something beautiful. So I just love that. Andy Crouch was a big leader on that in his book, Culture Making. But that's what the church has always done. And I've been frustrated sometimes with churches that also just want to copy each other's stuff. Like they think, well, if we ever make it to being a 20,000 member church or 10,000 member church, maybe we'll write a song. Come on, man. We should be using our gifts to create stuff that's beautiful. So I loved your response to that, and we are. I'm passionate about that. Obviously,
you're still fired up.
So I'm still fired up. Like, come on,
I love it.
Make a song, which you've been making a lot of songs lately. So tell me about your life as a creative.
Yeah, no, that's great. And
as
it just as a Christian creative. There you go. And it's the perfect tie-in when you start talking about how we respond, and are the creatives that have been given that gift actually using it to glorify the Lord, or are they using it in other ways? I think I find myself often like this, and especially in organizational work too. You, as a creative, that means you're often labeled as a solutions person, right? Or it's easy you're going to scratch that creative itch if you're providing a solution for something. So I think even in churches that like smaller churches, and you've got people that have an artistic bent or creative bent to them, and they're actually using those gifts for solutions, for children's ministry, for facilities, for whatever it might be, right? And even though they may be some of them are sitting on a music degree and can write music, but also not having that, like, what's the charge in front of them, right? Because often you're looking at it and going, okay, what do I need to do that's hot right now? So that's always a challenge, right? So for me in this last year especially, then it's been, okay, Lord, let's really take some time to focus specifically on kind of that original calling here at First Pres, which we've been doing in different ways. I've always been, you find me with a camera in my hand or doing something. We're making something. We're always doing something. We're creating sermon series graphics. We're doing a lot of those things. There's a lot that has come out of this shop.
We've made a lot of environments,
right? So how does each one of our venues, reflect the message that we're trying to create? Or sometimes it's just, let's just put up a bunch of Christmas trees, and that's your creative bent for that day.
Well, it creates. That creates.
That's
Christmas,
right.
Yeah.
But touching a little bit on what you were talking about before, there has been some health issues in my life, and some of that has been about to kind of doing a blog on the heart of worship, when the heart of worship gets tested. So I love that, just in the song, when the music fades and all is stripped away, and you get down to that moment of saying, okay, then what's the true heart of worship? What are we bringing? And it's more than a song. It's more than just cool notes or some great cool guitar riff or whatever it is. It's you're bringing a heart.
Yeah.
And so for me, having gone through some of the health stuff lately, and some of that where it felt like, oh, this gifting that I've just always relied on since I could walk, is potentially going away. You know, whether that's, lungs are now not being filled with air like they should be, or my hands can't work like they can, or like they should be. And so when you go through that process, then you also are evaluating, okay, Lord, every day I'm now realizing is a gift, and how you have gifted me, I need to be using as best as I can to praise you. And where am I seeing you work, and how to respond and create out of that. So that was a big moment for me.
Felt a sense of urgency.
A sense of urgency. And I still feel that. I mean, just honestly, as a worship leader too, like there is every Sunday when we gather together, that's a gift.
Yeah.
And so I have some renewed strength in that, some renewed energy, renewed passion for when we gather, let's not just toss this one to the wind.
Yeah.
This is intentional, and we should be taking that extension into our everyday lives and singing a new song. Each one of us, we don't have to be a songwriter to sing a new song, you know?
Yeah.
But this year I've been diving into it. I had a coworker that was like, Chris, there's no reason why you shouldn't have 10 new songs this year. And I was like, you know what? It's probably right. How could we make that work? And we did it. And
Nice.
there's 10 new songs, and a lot of them are coming out now. The church has sung a handful of them this year.
Yep.
And some of them are now being sung in other churches as well.
Nice.
But life of a creative, and especially this year, has been driving into, okay, how do we create songs? How do we create experiences through video? And how do we tell stories, which is the greatest story ever told? How do we continue to tell that story? How do we continue to bring glory to the Lord? And how do we make it our own? I just continue to be surprised by every time a lyric comes out, that there is something that somebody goes, this really connected with me because of this, and it was completely not what
Sure.
I thought, you know. And I know that you have that experience often,
Yes.
because every week there is a creative moment. The Lord, you're just saying, Lord, pour your Spirit on this, and I'm
Yep.
going to communicate that to our church, and out of that, you hope that it's landing in the way that the Lord is wanting it and orchestrating it to land. And a lot of times that's where. Right? I mean, you get surprised by stories of going,
yeah, God
like, wait,
uses,
what?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges as creatives is, which to some extent I am, I think, but
To a lot of extent you are.
yeah, probably,
actually.
yeah, I think you're right, yeah, but you don't do the work because there's such a pressure on like marketing and like, is this going to go far? Is this going to go wide? Is this going to be worth my time to? And I remember an author and pastor in a podcast, as Mark Batterson actually said, if you've been wired up to write, if you've been called to write, then if you're not writing, you're standing in disobedience.
Right.
So you've been wired up to write songs, and it's just like, I don't know what God's going to do with this, and that doesn't have to play in. Like this, I need to be obedient to Christ, compelling me to make something and just get it. Go through the work, because it is work.
It is work. Right.
So what are
and good work.
What would you say? What's the character of these 10 songs? What are you writing about?
A lot of it is we've got songs that are driven around when we gather together, what are we gathering for? Okay. And so there's praise, there's adoration. There's songs that are coming out of when people are going through a heavy time, and I'm just reflecting a song out of what's going on through a challenge in life, you know. So there are some songs in here that are saying, Lord, this is really hard, and I just need you to move.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's on the other side of this valley that I'm in, but in this moment, I'm going to give it to you. One of the songs that has recently now kind of hit all the streaming services, Be Still, just came out of a moment of, I am trying to do too much, and the Lord's just telling me to dude, Chris, just stop for a second. Just listen, and quit trying to achieve things for me, but draw them near to me.
I was just listening to some comment on Psalm 23 of that it didn't have to be still waters, and he leads me beside still waters, and but that's there. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, in some ways, you think you need flowing waters,
right?
But the still waters was a comment on, are you gonna pause enough to let the Spirit work in your life?
That's right.
Yeah, be still.
You're gonna pause. So yeah, there's moments of pause. There's moments of worshiping through some heartache, but a lot of it is just kind of for me, it's been, I've got a big passion right now, again, on when I say is like, when we gather, let's do this with purpose.
Yeah.
And let's invite the Spirit to come do something that it's unexpected. So that's where a lot of it is. I mean, you talk about in the Psalms, the late 90s of the Psalms are just filled with these almost commands, right, of sing a new song unto the Lord.
Yeah.
And I love 95 is like, come, let us sing for joy, right? Psalm 96, sing a new song to the Lord. 97's, it's finishing, rejoice in the Lord, all you, and praise his holy name. 98, sing to the Lord a new song. There it is again, right? Psalm 99, the Lord reigns, so let the nations tremble, right? All the way through. And then 100, shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness, come before him with joyful songs. So a big part of that for me, I mean, this is one of the notebooks that I've been like writing songs out of this year. And in the life of a creative, it looks really interesting. You're going to have some funny stuff in here. I do a lot of things to maintain creativity. So this is actually a song for a French producer. I as a creative, I do studio work for some Sony Music friends in Paris.
Nice.
And it keeps like that. There's a balance in that. It helps you connect in with inspiration from what's happening across the globe, and it kind of gets you out sometimes of that church. You can kind of get in a church worship.
Yeah, you get in a church
rut for a minute.
Rut. Yep.
And these are just pieces that we did for songs and that went under videos. So a lot of the videos we make, a lot of those songs that
did that one say podcast recording?
One of them said podcast recording. Right. So I wrote the piece, for
what we hear on the intro and outro.
A lot of that kind of stuff is happening, unless Ryan's changed it, which is fine. But this is good. Like this is a song that is yet to hit. But this is one that there's just over and over again saying, how do we from hope to joy, and then here's all the Psalms that connects with, and NIV versus Message.
Right,
Which ones, right? Because that matters. It's Psalm 8 and 2 or 3 are gathered. This is the one that's coming very soon. But these are songs that are driven around that. We have I love to collaborate as well. So collaborating with other worship leaders here, not only just in town, or inviting them into our creative space down here at church that the church has been given with your leadership, saying, hey, let's have a space that we can invite people in. Let's not just do it ourselves and hold on to it. But
other Christian artists to
that's right.
make beauty.
So it's there for that, for people to come use. And I collaborate well also with my blood brothers, and Roger is a worship leader in Houston, and so I have fun writing with him as well. And it's amazing when you collaborate with others. I know this is something for you with teaching, right? When you're trying to create a message. A lot of times there can be these moments where you go, I think that's pretty good, right? And then as soon as you hand that to someone to go, what do you think, right? And then there's this fresh perspective.
Yeah.
And they go, I think you could actually help make that a little more clear.
Right.
So there's been like a lot of the songs that we've done that released the last few years, a lot of them have landed on your desk.
Yeah.
And I go, Tim, what do
that.
you think? How do we make this message more clear, right?
Well, what I love about that, as one of the ways that God uses worship is not just to open up the emotions, but God uses worship and praise and song to seep teaching into our hearts. That's why the Psalms are lyrical, is that the Spirit uses these rhythms that we're wired into, literally in creation,
right?
To allow His word to get deeper into our hearts, and so you find yourself singing something again and again and again. Well, that's how we were made to. And I know you're a curator, you're a caretaker of what words are seeping into somebody's heart, and knowing you want to know that they're true, that they're biblical, that they're Christ-centered, that they're going to do the right work when they seep into somebody's heart.
Right.
And I super appreciate that about you. So
well, thanks. Yeah, there's a constant challenge that we have right now, especially with the tools that are being presented for us with technology. There's kind of this thought that everyone can be creative.
Right.
So whether you're using a quick app or something like even Canva makes it easy just to make a logo.
You can write a country song for your girlfriend for her birthday.
Exactly.
On Facebook. I've seen it happen.
AI is happening, super fast. And so, but you take all that and you go, all right, this needs to be actually something that's where the work comes in. This is not something that is just generally this is what the people would like, or that something's going to trigger, it's going to play some algorithm. But it's like, no, what's God actually doing in your heart? And then how do you make sure that message is super clear to those that are around you? They can absorb that and then have their own journey of discipleship with the Lord.
That's the challenge. God's a creator. He made us in his image. And to be true to your creative qualities, your creative gifts, that's a gift to the church. And I'm glad that you're here sharing that gift with us. And of course, so of course people can come on Sunday morning and experience worship with you, but how else can people directly interact with the music that you're producing, that you're creating?
Yeah, anywhere you stream music, so it's actually become an easy way to make that happen. Of what kind of goes out and then it hits all the platforms. So
at once,
there's 45 online stores that are now streaming wherever it is. If it's Apple Music or Spotify or whatever, you can grab that.
And how many of these 10 songs have come out so far on that?
Yeah, only a few, right? Okay. So that we're just now getting started as far as making them fully public. So we've been singing some as a church, and we have recordings of these that are sitting waiting. So in the next month, so what literally just dropped was the Psalms album, which is a beginning of the year. The idea of, hey, you might be trying to reset your study pattern, whether that's study for school, but hopefully biblical study as well, or in times of quiet. And this is a project that came out of a Psalms series that you taught on. Yeah. And I was inspired by that, and we wrote a song. And I say basically the cool thing about this project, I'll just say this real quick. It was a fun experience of just trying to say, Lord, what would happen if you just inspired me in the moment? And then that from God's word, and then that went into song immediately. So I sat in our studio with the Psalms open, and as I read, I would play. And it's an improv album. Wow. And so if you follow along on the title track, if it's Psalm 23 or Psalm 8 or whatever it might be, if you follow along the music while you read, you should experience the psalm. Read with the music underneath. And you can kind of feel then, maybe what was Chris feeling during this, and then what am I feeling during this, right? Yeah. Or you can just let that thing just run on repeat. So it's a study album that just dropped anywhere you stream music. And then we've got the song 23 is right on its heels. The song We Sing Praise comes out at the beginning of February. Nice. So we're kind of a new season where it's kind of a steamroll of stuff is kind of coming out, and I'm excited for that. And then you can go to Chris Cullins Creative and see where a lot of this stuff is being inspired. I like being inspired by nature. So going out, a lot of the artwork that's done on this is it's landscape photos that I love to go out and just capture God's beauty and put that on there and just, hey, this is a reflection of joining in with the trees, the rocks, the birds, all of creation singing together. So that's where it is.
Awesome. Chris, thanks for spending this time with us and the Light and Life podcast, and just stay creative. And I hope that's an inspiration to our listeners to stay creative, as Christians, to, the robots are not going to do it. And it doesn't matter, the marketing machine and all that. Just stay true, stay creative. God's got a creative impulse that he's put in, I believe, in every human being. But some of us, it really is the primary way that your story is going to get expressed is to stay creative and stay true to telling that, to letting God generate these new things, is to make beauty. So thanks for inspiring that around here, and for leading us in worship, and for being such a shepherd and colleague and friend. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for giving us the opportunity and the canvas to be able to do this, and the leadership that you've given to First Press, but also churches in our denomination to be able to, let's lean in. Let's do it. Let's lean in. Let's make stuff. Let's make stuff. Well, if you're enjoying these conversations on faith and life, fret not. Your real host will be back soon. And it's been fun to do this today. But leave a review for us, interact with us, hit us online on YouTube, communicate with us as you can find you're able. We take emails at podcasts@firstprescause.org. And if you're watching YouTube, leave a comment below. Be sure to follow us. Don't miss an episode next time, in 2 weeks' time. We're going to talk about divine love in the everyday. We've got a sermon series coming up on love, and we're going to talk about how God shows up with his love in our everyday life. So thanks for listening, and we will see you in a couple of weeks on the Light and Life podcast.